experiencing those at 6, 7, 8, I mean, I didn't know what was going on, So part of that was just this funny sensation, deja vu, a lot of deja vu, just feelings of confusion, disorientation, um, wanting to say something, but the words not coming out completely, or having little lapse in my day, like not remembering things. I would be playing with my dolls and then I would wake up in a different area of the room, or I wake up on the floor laying down, like, okay, what happened? And a lot of times I think my parents thought I was taking naps when I was probably having these focal seizures.
Hi, everybody. Today we're going to get really personal with what it's really like to have epilepsy and what it's like to have a seizure. But what is epilepsy? Well, epilepsy is a brain condition that causes seizures, and it can affect people of every age. Seizures happen when there's a sudden burst of electrical activity, which leads to a wide range of symptoms. Some seizures are very short and they look like the person may be just staring off or just having like a sudden jerk of their body. But others can be more intense. And the one that I'm thinking of is called a tonic-clonic seizure, where the whole body shakes and the person may lose consciousness. Some people have seizures very often, and some people only have one, maybe one a year. Many times seizures are controlled with medications. In the United States, there's quite a few people with seizures. In fact, 3.4 million people are diagnosed with epilepsy, including nearly 500,000 children. If we widen that scope and look worldwide, we can see that about 50 million people have experienced seizures, and that makes it the most common brain disorder globally. Unfortunately, many people that have seizures face stigma and misunderstanding about what the condition really is. And most people think of a seizure as the very severe ones where the person falls down and loses consciousness. But there's more to it than that. So we're going to describe some seizure types, but the first thing I'm going to do is introduce to you Monica Lopez, and she is somebody who is a very special guest because she's going to actually explain to us what it's like to have a seizure and some of the stigmas related to living with it. So Monica, hello, welcome to our KCNA2 and other rare epilepsy podcast. Thank you so much for being here. First, let's tell the audience how we actually met. I think that's interesting.
Okay, so we were part of the 30 people that were chosen to be part of the research clinical trials for the Epilepsy Foundation team that just started this year, and which was something very excited that we got to be part of this. And basically, what we do is spread the word and advocate for research clinical trials. And yeah, so we were happy to they chose people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different views when it comes to epilepsy. We had scientists, we had doctors, we had moms with children who had epilepsy. So just a variety of people.
Yeah, and you were one of the 30. I was one of the 30. And I'll tell you that one of the things I do in a large group is I take a look at who has the most positive energy in the room. And you certainly stood out. So that's why I tried to get to know you. And I now know that you experience epilepsy. So to hear and you're very involved in the epilepsy community. So to hear your experiences, I think it's just going to be such a value to our listening audience. So, Monica, tell us a little bit about where you're from, you know, um, where you grew up, a little bit about your family, and when you discovered or somebody did that you were having seizures.
Sure. Okay, well, absolutely involved with epilepsy. I'm an advocate, I'm a facilitator, a coach, and also just a creative entrepreneur. I come from a background of graphic design and advertising, so that all helps me. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, but I am currently living in Las Vegas. So I have been in Las Vegas for going on 14 years now. Um, and yeah, I also developed this program called Reset, where I go in and talk with nonprofits and organizations, companies, and teach them about seizure safety, first aid, and provide an insight on what it is to live with epilepsy. Because there's so much more to epilepsy than just seizures. That's just kind of the tip of the iceberg when it comes to it. And yes, I have epilepsy myself. I was diagnosed when I was 10. I had my first seizure when I was 10 and then another one at 11, and have been living with this for 42 years now.
So when you had your first seizure, I mean, I know there's more to epilepsy than just seizures, but it starts with having a seizure, or else you don't even know you have it. When you had your first seizure, did anyone know what it was? Were people around you aware?
Uh, so my first seizure actually happened in school. Like I said, I was 10 years old. I was in the school cafeteria stadium, so it literally was in front of the entire school as we all sat there for assembly day. And yeah, I had a seizure. The ambulance was called, and all of that happened. My second seizure occurred maybe a year later, and that one was after a sleepover. So I didn't sleep well that night, and the following morning I had a seizure. So that's when I was really diagnosed with epilepsy. And that's where my epilepsy journey began. But looking back now as an adult and looking back at my childhood, I see that there were signs or there were actual seizures happening when I was much younger. But they were inside, they were internal, and those are known more as focal aware seizures. So there's no exterior symptoms. So they were just things that I felt, and I just thought that was normal. I didn't think anything of it. But yeah, looking back now, there were seizures that were going on before that.
So when you say you had internal focal aware seizures and no one could see it from the outside, what is that experience like in the inside?
So focal aware seizures, or they're also called auras, vary with everyone. Depending on where your seizures begin in your brain, that will determine the kind of sensations and feelings that you feel with your aura. Not everyone experiences auras, but a lot of people do. And so for me, experiencing those at 6, 7, 8, I mean, I didn't know what was going on, you know. So part of that was just this funny sensation, deja vu, a lot of deja vu. What else? Just feelings of confusion, disorientation, um, wanting to say something, but the words not coming out completely, or having little lapse in my day, like not remembering things. So, for example, like when I would be playing with my dolls and then I would wake up in a different area of the room and kind of be a little confused as to how did I get here? Or I wake up on the floor laying down, like, okay, what happened? You know, and a lot of times I think my parents thought I was taking naps when I was probably having these focal seizures.
So it was the tonic-clonic seizure that was witnessed by many that made everyone say, "Oh my gosh, this is a seizure."
Right.
After that first seizure, did they medicate you or did they give you any kind of workup with EEGs? What did they do?
Yes, when you're initially diagnosed, you have to go through all the testing. So you do the EEGs, you do the MRIs, which that in itself is a transition for a child, right? Because now you go from this normal childhood to now a medical one, and you're in and out of doctors, hospitals, medications. Um, so as a child, that's a lot. It can be overwhelming. That in itself can give you stress, which then can induce seizures. So yeah, it's a certain kind of balance that you have to, a certain way of life that you have to live where you have to balance everything out. But yes, all the EEGs and MRIs showed that I was having seizure activity in my brain, and they showed the area. I have them on the left temporal lobe, where they were coming from.
So if since it's the left temporal lobe, do you sometimes forget like the names of things or words, or is speech affected?
Yes, I do have a lot of memory issues. I do have a lot of cognitive issues, and I think as I've gotten older, I've seen that get worse. Um, there was a lot of things I couldn't fully understand as a child, and so I kind of thought, started feeling like having low self-esteem because of that, but not really understanding why. No one ever explained to me the other ways that seizures can affect your life and how they can affect your brain and those kinds of ways, reading comprehension, all of that. So those are just things that you need to keep in mind if your child is newly diagnosed and keep an eye out for.
So you okay, I do wanna hear about the struggles because I think when people hear about the challenges that are in addition to seizures, parents can then focus on that and give their child support. So I wanna talk a little bit about that, but I don't wanna forget that somehow, you ended up being a huge advocate, you're married, you have kids, you have a full life. So there's that part too, but so before we get to the strengths, which we'll get to, what were some of the challenges that you had as a child that people maybe didn't see, but your epilepsy was related?
Um, well, there's a lot of challenges that go with epilepsy. Like I said, the seizures are pretty much just the tip of the iceberg. And I think the three um, hardest things for me was dealing with the emotional and mental side of it that comes with epilepsy. Because again, as a child, you really don't understand that, and no one really talks to you about that. I mean, we live in a time now where that's more, there's more awareness about mental health, right? But back then, that was not the case. So I think dealing with the internal mental and emotional struggles of being diagnosed, of living with seizures, and then as well as just understanding that this is a journey, and it wasn't something that had a quick fix. It was a journey that I was just starting. So, and I'm still on, so everyone has this journey along the way. And as parents, we also have a role to play in that. But yeah, all of that kind of was difficult. I think another aspect of it was to learn how to stay monotone when it came to emotions. Um, I couldn't be too emotional, so I couldn't be too happy, too sad, too mad. I couldn't have, too excited. Any rise or decrease in emotion would provoke a seizure. So that was really hard as a child, because you want to play, you want to be happy, but yet you can't. You have to contain yourself.
So you
Surprise.
knew that? Like you
I
knew that as a child that if I get too excited or too sad, I will have a seizure or breakthrough?
I discovered that on my own, right. So
And how
part
did
of
you
that,
how did you control yourself? How did you cope with that?
that's what I'm saying. That was really, really hard. I think that was one of the hardest things to do. And I still to a certain extent do that. But yeah, I started figuring out whenever I was excited, I would have a seizure. When I was sad, I would have a seizure. If I would get mad, I would have a seizure. So I started just kind of pinpointing that and realizing, okay, I gotta just kind of calm back and started learning how to meditate. I'm an artist, so I used my art as therapy to cope with that a lot as well. I'm a writer, so writing and journaling was very helpful and was a way that I coped with that as well.
So, okay, and so when you were 10, you had your first seizure, and then you were learning to cope and your family was learning how to support you. Was, it easier during high school since you understood the condition better? Just curious.
I think during high school it kind of went through, like I said, it's a journey that goes through different phases. So I think when I got to high school, I went into the phase of rebellion and anger and the why me stage because you go through the grief stages.
Hmm.
Um, so in high school, that's where that all happened. I didn't want this. I didn't ask for this. You know, my life completely changed overnight, and the way that I was seen by others changed overnight. So, I mean, as it is, adolescents have a lot to deal with, right? A lot of challenges, and that's where you're trying to find yourself and looking for your identity, self-identity. And so now you add epilepsy to the mix, and that just kind of made everything a little harder. I remember I was very, very, very angry, and a lot of it came from side effects of medications. There's something that's called the Keppra range, which is a specific medication, Keppra, that causes you to behave this way. And I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. You know, no one told me that. So you're kind of battling all these mental emotions, you know. Um, but yeah, going through that stage, I think the other part of it was the lack of independence. You know, I couldn't drive. I couldn't go to sleepovers. I couldn't go shopping with my girlfriends. You know, I couldn't do the normal things that everyone else could do. So it affected me in that way, just realizing my limitations. I didn't realize that as much when I was a child, but then, you know, as a teenager, you start seeing things differently. So I didn't like it. I didn't like this thing called epilepsy, and I didn't want it. Um, I remember I didn't like taking my medications, so it got to a point where my mom would have to put it in my mouth and watch me, but I would hide it and turn around and kind of spit it out. And obviously have more seizures. So until I realized, okay, I'm causing this to myself, wasn't until I finally started to kind of learn to accept it. And that completely changed everything for me.
How old were you when you were kind of learning to accept it?
I think I was about 15.
And what things can parents look out for when they have a child that's going through this, and how can they support that child?
Um, well, like physical things, what can they look out for?
Or emotional?
Yeah, I think as long as you have a good open communication with your child and you see any differences in their behavior, their way of thinking, the way they're acting, um, you can just ask them, you know, how are you feeling instead of how was school today, but how are you feeling? What are your thoughts? I mean, we should be doing this with our kids anyway, right? But I think if I had had more of that, that would have been helpful for me. I think that would have made me realize that some of the things I was feeling were not normal, were not things that I should have been feeling. When it comes to teenagers, there's a lot of suicide ideation that comes along with epilepsy and with medications. Um, so I think if that was talked about more, maybe that would have been helpful too. So there's a lot of hidden things underneath that go with epilepsy, right? And I think all of that needs to come out in the open. All of that needs to be talked about. Another thing for me was that I didn't know anyone else who had this. No one else. I mean,
Oh.
we're living in a world where now we have the internet, so we have kids that are able to meet other kids and teens that are able to talk to other teenagers. And that makes a huge difference. You know, in my case, I was the only one in my community and my family, um, but I was blessed with a great family, a great community. Everyone looked out for me. Everyone took care of me, you know, no complaints there.
So when you mentioned before, I know, I think a lot of people have heard of Keppra, which is also sometimes referred to as Keprage because of the side effects. Were you on Keppra or were you on different medications? How did that all get sorted out?
I think initially there was a lot of trying to find what was the right treatment for me, what was the right medication, what was the right combination of medication, um, and just going through all these changes and getting all the side effects of the medications. So that entire experience was a lot, not only on me, but on the family. You know, epilepsy is not just about the one person, it is the entire family. And you need the family, you need that support. And everyone plays a role in it, you know. So having that support from your family is crucial. I don't know how people do it without it, to be quite honest. But as a child, you definitely need that.
So, Monica, you made it through high school and then you went to college
I
after
did.
that? And
Yes.
okay, so I wanna hear something about your college experience because then you're away from your family unless you lived at home, or did you move?
No, I stayed home. I stayed home. I couldn't leave home. Yeah, I had to stay home. Um,
Were you driving then?
no. No,
Oh,
I did not start driving until I had my first son at the age of 32. Um, I shouldn't say I had my, until my son started school, preschool. That's when I started driving.
okay, so you met your husband somehow. What happened there?
So I lived in Chicago, which, you know, we have an amazing train system and bus system, so you don't necessarily need to drive. So yeah, what's called the L. So that's how I went to and from school and to work. And I've done a lot of other things that I was told I could not do.
So when they were telling you you could not do this, was this because they were looking at your symptoms, or they totally misunderstood epilepsy to begin with, or they just weren't listening? What was the reason you think that was their vantage point?
I think the number one thing was to avoid having seizures, right? Um, so if I was put under any kind of stress,
Oh.
that would cause a seizure. So the things that I've always wanted to do have been somewhat stressful, right? I'm a very adventurous person and I like to do things. I don't like to sit still. And so I think that was the main concern when it came to my neurologist and my family, just trying to hold me back from doing certain things because, you know, I was probably going to have a seizure. And the way that I looked at it, by the time I started accepting epilepsy and my seizures, it it had to become almost like this companion, you know, that was with me wherever I went. That's where it was. You know, it wasn't so much a shadow anymore. It became like this companion, and I always knew it was there. And sometimes it was going to poke out, and sometimes it wouldn't. But that was okay, you know? So when it happened, it would happen. If I had a seizure, I have it, and I did have it, out in the streets of Chicago. I've had it on the platforms on the trains. You know, I've had it in dangerous places. But you just get up and you move on and you keep going.
So they were concerned, okay, that's fair. They were concerned that you were gonna put yourself under stress, and the stress was gonna cause a seizure, and they were trying to avoid that.
Mhm.
So that tells me that along the way, you had to learn about your triggers so that you could try to avoid them. How
Right.
did you learn about your triggers, and what are they?
So, when I was younger and the seizures were starting, the person that was usually always attending me was my mom. My mom has been my rock. And, my dad seemed to get bothered and would get upset that I had this. But my mom was the strong one and was there and was always attending to me. And I never saw my mom cry. And one day when I think I was about 14, 13, I had a seizure. And afterwards, I heard her in the room. And then when I went to see her, she was crying. So this is the first time in several years that I see my mother crying because I had a seizure. And she turned to me with desperation and said, "You have to feel something. You have to feel something. Listen to your body." And it was this immense sense of guilt of how I was making her feel. And at that time, going through that rebellious stage and that anger where I knew I wasn't properly taking my medicine. So I was provoking this to happen. And it just kind of all just hit me, you know, and was like, okay, this isn't fair and I got to take care of myself. that's when I started learning how accept how I had to accept this. I started paying attention to my body, learning what my auras were. I started realizing what my triggers were. At times, I was even provoking them. I was trying to see how far I could do things, how far of my emotions I could go, how happy could I be, how sad could I get. So I was kind of just experimenting all of that by myself on my own. But that's what helped me. That's what helped me discover what my triggers are. Everyone's triggers are different. Everyone's auras are different. Um, so I have my 5 auras and I know the order that they come in.
Wait,
And
can you just define for the audience the difference, or first define what an aura and a trigger is, and then the differences?
okay, well, an aura is really a focal seizure. When a person is aware and there's no outside symptoms, there's no exterior symptoms, everything is felt inside. So it's really a focal seizure. If if it progresses to a seizure that is more severe, like a tonic clonic or what used to be called a grand mal, then that aura is considered a warning sign. So not everyone has warning signs, but those that do, have a couple seconds to let someone know that they're going to have a seizure or to lay themselves down, in a safe place. And by seconds, I literally mean like maybe 20 seconds. You don't have a lot of time, but that does allow you to notify somebody. So that's what an aura is. And again, where your seizures come from in your brain determines what kind of aura and the sensation that you're going to feel. In my case, I feel disorientation, confusion. I feel like this tingling sensation that starts from my toes and goes all the way up. When it hits my waist and if it stops, I know that's an aura. If it continues to go up, I know that the convulsion is going to follow. So I have from the waist to the head per se, to notify someone to lay myself down in a safe place. I also have like a nauseous feeling and I get a sense of fear. You just get really scared. So I often tell people it's kind of like having a seizure is almost like a solar eclipse. If you can visualize an eclipse, that's kind of what it feels like. You see it coming, you know it's coming, and you just kind of have to prepare for it. And then suddenly, total blackout, you see nothing, and then the sun or your consciousness reemerges slowly, right? And you come back to. Um, so that's kind of a visual way of what it feels like. Now, when you wake up from a seizure, you initially don't know what happened. You don't know where you are. You don't recognize the people. You don't know how much time has passed. But what you do know is how you feel. And whether it's your first seizure or your 100th seizure, there's always a sense of like embarrassment that comes along with that, especially if you're in a public place, right? Um, so then those are the feelings that you deal with after the seizure. You start to deal with the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, all the mental stuff, and everything around you, you hear it, but you can't make it out. So I would hear my mom, but I couldn't make out what she was saying.
Is this the post-ictal after your seizure?
This was a post-ictal, the
Okay.
recovery part. Yes, exactly.
Define for the audience what post-ictal really means.
So seizures have stages. So your first stage consists of two parts, which is the prodrome and the aura. Like I said, not everyone gets the aura. Some people are able to tell that they will be having a seizure days before it happens, and some people are just like hours. So everyone is different. Um, then you have the ictal stage, which is the actual convulsion, the actual tonic-clonic. And then you have the post-ictal, which is the recovery phase. And that's the part where, the person needs to really be protected because they're still confused, they're disoriented, they're vulnerable. They may start wandering, but their consciousness is not there. So you
Their
really,
balance may be off.
their balance, vertigo. Yep. Yep.
So when you've had these seizures, when you as like a young adult, did they adjust your medication, or did you just go on and with the same
um,
dose, or what
my,
happened?
my I'm gonna say that for the first 5 years, it was a lot of medications on and off, switching and all of that, like we spoke about earlier. By the time I turned 15 is when they found the right combination. So I'm
Okay.
on I don't know if I can say this, but I'm on Dilantin and Neurontin. So Dilantin is one of the first medications for epilepsy, so it's very, very old. There's a lot of
Mhm.
new ones, who don't have as many side effects as Dilantin does. So after 42 years of being on Dilantin, now at the age of 52, I'm starting to see the side effects of that, and starting
Like
to
what?
deal with those. I have a lot of memory issues. Um, a lot of, just body issues. With Dilantin, you have a growth of the gums as well. For women, you get a lot of facial hair, your vision kind of goes, there's cognitive issues. So yeah, you see your seizures change with you as you age. So that part of it is interesting. And as a woman, I also have catamenial seizures, which is connected to the hormones and the menstrual cycle for women. So every month, the week of my menstruation, I was prone to have seizures. So that's when I definitely would have one or two seizures. That is a time when I took care of myself. I
Are
ate
you I'm sorry, are you talking about tonic-clonic seizures or what kind of seizures? Okay, okay. So ones that everybody can see.
right.
Okay, keep going.
Tonic-clonic, the grandma, the Big Daddy. Yeah. So every
Big
month.
Danny.
Yep. Every month I would have those seizures, and so my mom, God bless her, um, she would call the school and let the principal know that I was on my menstruation, and the principal would notify the teacher, and the teacher would notify the class, and so everyone knew when I was on my period every month because that is the time that everyone took care of me, and she'd call my aunts and my grandmas and just let everyone know. So for me, that just became my norm, just letting people know, "Hey, this is my week. This is my week." Um, yeah, and that was difficult as a child and as a teen. That was difficult, and I was teased about it. But, as I grew up, I learned to appreciate that and, respect my mom for doing that. That took a lot. But,
And as you grew up, you met some man and ended up marrying him, and then you got pregnant twice or 3 times, I don't even know.
twice, twice.
Twice.
Yeah.
So how did you okay, first of all, 2 questions. Part 1, how did you I mean, you met somebody who accepted you, who you are and the seizure disorder, but also your wonderful personality and all your goals and your energy. And then 2, you had to adjust to pregnancies. How did you know the person you married was gonna be as supportive and wonderful as he is to you?
I didn't. You know, dating is
Okay.
dating with epilepsy is a whole nother aspect of it, and there was, some people that couldn't handle it, and that was okay. So I knew whomever I married, I probably had to live with them first because they would then be taking on literally my parents' responsibilities
Oh.
and would have to learn how to deal with that. Yeah. So when I worked at the Chicago Tribune, which is one of, or was rather, was one of the biggest newspapers in Chicago, and that's where I met my husband. And when we finally got engaged, I asked him to move in with me.
Well, did he know anything about seizures before he met you? Was he familiar?
No, he knew nothing about him, and I did tell him, I said, the day you see me have a seizure, everything is going to change, and you are going to change."
Did it?
And yeah, absolutely. That's
How
exactly what
how
happened.
so?
Because when you see someone have a seizure, and if it's your first time, it impacts you. It even scares people sometimes. Like I said, I have tonic-clonics, and they're not pretty.
When
um,
when did you have a seizure with him? Where were you when he saw your first seizure?
um, I th- I think it was a year after we had been dating. A year after we had been dating, I finally had the first one. I didn't sleep well the night before, which was one of my triggers, not sleeping. And so I did have it. And yeah, there was a lot of emotions that went with that, and my husband did tell me that he could not handle it, and unfortunately, we were going to have to separate, and that was fine. That was exactly what I was trying to figure out, you know. But fortunately, he came back a couple days later and, told me, realized that this was something that I don't have a choice. This is part of me, Um, and he wasn't going to let me go because of that. So now we became this team and this unit, and I have been blessed with him. When it came to children and getting married, I literally had to set everything on the table and say, I don't know if I could have children. I don't know if they will come out healthy or come out with some sort of disability or defect due to my medications, and had to have those conversations about adoption, all of that, just have those serious talks, and he was on board with me. So yeah, fortunately, we have two healthy, beautiful kids. They're adults now, but yeah, that's basically how that happened.
And what do you like if you were to talk to a group of parents who are experiencing their children having early onset seizures or seizures for the first time, whatever age they are, what do you tell parents that help support them support their children?
I think it's very important for parents to understand, like I mentioned earlier, that this is a journey. It's a journey that you're going on with your children and that your children are going on by themselves. So as much as you want to protect them, you also need to give them that space to empower themselves to learn how to navigate life with seizures. Epilepsy is not a death sentence. You can live a beautiful, wonderful life with it as long as you take care of yourself and follow your treatment, whatever that is, live a healthy life. You can live and have a beautiful life with epilepsy. Um, so yeah, I think that's really important. I think it's also important for parents themselves to get help, talk to someone. I believe epilepsy causes PTSD. I think I did cause PTSD from my family, from my parents, my brother. Like I said earlier, everyone has a different role, so my brother still deals with things. My mom, if she hears a loud slam, it's that sudden PTSD of when she remembers I would just fall on the floor. This was before I had auras. So yeah, it's just kind of educating yourself about what epilepsy is and the type of epilepsy that your child has is very important, and just kind of reaching out and being there for them emotionally and mentally is very, very important.
Monica, I know you mentioned that you had 5 seizure types. You've explained 2. Can you briefly just tell us about the other 3?
Sure. So the third one I have is photosensitive. And that's basically I'm sensitive to lighting, certain lightings, bright lights, even something like when you're driving and you got the flickering of the sun through the trees, those kinds of lights, and also the tonic-clonics. I think we've spoken about those.
Mhm.
And myoclonics. I have myoclonic seizures, and that's basically like spasms, and it could be either a group of muscles or a particular muscle. So a lot of people, it's the arms, and you'll kind of just see like this jerk or twitching. So for me, it is the arms and my hands. I tend to drop a lot of things, and it's also my knees. So I tend to
Oh.
fall a lot. Yeah, and a lot of people can confuse that with being under the influence of, alcohol, cannabis, or being clumsy. But yeah, the fact is that it's actually a seizure. So
Yeah, so it's important for other people around you to be aware of different seizure types and what can happen when you have one so that they can see it and
right.
they understand it. The last 3 questions I have, these are kind of rapid ones, but the first one is what do you wish more people understood about epilepsy?
Um, I wish more people understood that epilepsy is more than just having seizures. There's There's a lot that goes with it. I think we've kind of touched on a couple of things. My biggest one is the mental health aspect, and I think we're going to talk about that at another time, right? Um, but yeah, it's a spectrum disease, and it's an individual condition. Everyone is different, and everyone's seizure is different. So if you've seen someone have a seizure, or if you hear someone has epilepsy, that is only one person. There are at this point, I believe there's 21 types of seizures, and that number raises to about 60 with the subclassifications of seizures. So there's a lot. Tonic-clonic alone, tonic means when the body gets rigid. So there's people that have seizures where the body's just rigid. Um, the clonic part of it is when you have the shaking. So there's people that just have the clonic seizures. And then you have tonic-clonic where you have both. And that's the one that I have. And they usually last a few minutes. They will resolve themselves. I think it's also important for people to understand that how you react to the seizure makes a huge difference as to how we will feel when we're waking up from the seizure. I
That's
can't
a good
tell you
point.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times that I have woken up and seen people panicking, crying, or feeling sorry for me or staring at me like I'm something strange. So all of those things, they hit you and they impact you at the moment.
That leads me to my second question. If I'm a parent or a friend or even a stranger and I witness somebody having a seizure, what are some of the things I can say to that person as they're waking out of it that would be calming?
So, yeah, the first thing would be to, like I said, I do seizure first aid classes and help other people empower themselves to learn how to address and how to properly attend to someone having a seizure. It's really, really important to protect the person and to protect their dignity during and after the seizure. There are some cases where people will vomit or will have other sorts of expulsions from their body, and that can be embarrassing. So, if you know first aid and be able to recognize that that's a seizure and that that's not someone who's under the influence of drugs or alcohol, that makes a huge, huge difference. But based off the Epilepsy Foundation, they basically, their steps are basically to stay safe inside. So stay with the person, keep the person safe, make sure there's nothing around them that can hurt them. And when the seizure is done, put them on their side for any saliva or, blood or anything to kind of come out sideways. So there's no choking on that. So, but yeah, there's a lot of information that you can look into in the Epilepsy Foundation, or you can follow my site, Epilepsy Reset, and yeah.
Well, that was my last question. Where can people that want to know more about general epilepsy, what website can they go to? What is your website and what is the epilepsy website?
So the Epilepsy Foundation has a variety of programs, has all the information that you could possibly think of. So that would be your first resource, I would say. And if you need anything else, they can help you and direct you with other places. Um, for me, you can always reach me at epilepsyreset.com. So that is my seizure safe program. And you can always email me at monica@epilepsyreset.com.
Well, I'll tell you, really want to thank you for being here today. I know that we have other topics and podcasts lined up with you, and I really know what a value you are to our community. So I thank you for today, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Oh,
Thanks.
thank you.